sheltered than in our own home. And that said, here, look at the Jewish calendar. Wednesday night, we have the Seder. Rabbi, I've never felt that I've been living Torah as much as I feel like we're living it now. The Seder is going to repeat the final night of bondage in Egypt. The Israelites huddled in their homes as the Mashchit, the destroyer, the angel of death, afflicted Egypt with a fearsome, the most fearsome plague, slaying the firstborn. So to think that we find shelter in our homes on Wednesday night as we celebrate the Seder, it's just more meaningful than the Seder has ever been before. So to me, that's just the start of it. Every Friday night, we do what we go around the table before we make motzi and share thoughts about the week just ending, the Shabbat just beginning. And last Friday night, I found myself hearkening back to the Joseph story where he interpreted Pharaoh's dreams for 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. And I thought to myself, this is the start of the years of famine. God willing, this famine, so to speak, won't last as long as 7 years, but as you and I were just discussing, it's going to last for a while. We don't know how long. But I think we should find comfort in the fact that indeed it will end. It will one day end. And perhaps in our conversation now we'll have more to say about that. What I found, and you may be familiar with this midrash, during the Hadrianic persecutions by Rome, it was forbidden for Jews to study Torah. So I think it was told of Rabbi Akiva that he was studying Torah when his colleague Shmuel HaKatan, Sam Small, approached him and said, Akiva, what are you doing studying Torah? You know, you'll be executed for this. And Akiva said, I need to dive more deeply into the wellspring of my life. He said, if a fox is lurking on the banks of a stream, ready to pounce on fish, the fish don't swim closer to the bank, they dive deeper. And that's what I'm going to do too. And that's what I find I'm doing. I'm minimizing my exposure to the news. What is comforting in the news? Very little. And I'm maximizing the things that have always sustained the Jewish people, like praying, like study. I heard Jonathan Sachs give the Devar Torah right as the pandemic was bursting across the globe. And he said, what does a Jew do when he has a headache? He studies Torah. So I've been focusing on that, and I encourage anyone and everyone who's listening to us now to do the same. Rabbi, as you know, I prepared a list of prayers that I think are timely and reassuring, and I'm ready, if you're ready, to go through them. Here, the Matov, this is the first prayer that we offer. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkanotecha Yisrael. How fair, how goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwellings, O Israel. Talk about sheltering in place. It's a beautiful idea, don't you think? Now, here's the next thing in traditional liturgy. And if you'd be so kind to go to the next prayer, in between the Matovu and now this prayer, the traditional liturgy has the bracha for washing the hands. Baruch atah asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al natilat yadayim. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who makes us holy through your mitzvot and commands us to wash our hands. Every time I wash my hands, and like everyone, it's multiple times through the day, I recite that bracha. And then I get to this, and I wish, and I hope, and I expect that the next iteration of a Reform prayer book will include Al Natilat Yadayim, will include the bracha for washing one's hands. Then, looking to make it 20 seconds altogether, I'll recite this bracha here in translation. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who formed the human body with skill, creating the body's many pathways and openings. It is well known before your throne of glory that if one of them be wrongly opened or closed, it would be impossible to endure and stand before you. Baruch atah Adonai rofei chol basar umafli la'asot. To which let us all say, Amen.
Yeah.
Can we move on from here?
Absolutely.
I have a long list of prayers. Please cut me off when you think we need to move on to something else. But next, the prayer for the soul, Elohai neshama shenatata bi taharahi. Is this being, okay. So, my God, the soul you have given me is pure. You created it, you shaped it, you breathed it into me, and you protect it within me. Now, here's something that the Reform movement deleted from the traditional prayer that really, unfortunately, gives tremendous meaning otherwise, and I wish everyone had a sense of it. And in the future, it continues, you will pluck it from me. You will pluck my soul from me, and then you will return it to me in the future to come. Now, I'll note this vis-a-vis after the bracha for the study of Torah. These are the things which have the reward in this world and in the world to come. Indeed, that traditional part of the liturgy is included in the world to come. And that's exactly what this prayer now for the soul, that God plucks it from us and will return it to us in the future to come. That's reference to the world to come. Judaism is the religion that introduced happy endings to the world. And the world to come is the fulfillment of that prayer, the fulfillment of that vision. So I wanted to point out that too. Moving on. Yeah, these are beautiful. The morning prayers. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, who opens the eyes of the blind, who frees the captive. I'm sure all of us are experiencing moments of cabin fever. And this says that one day we will be freed, if you will, from this. So Kef Kufufim at the bottom. If you can scroll up a little bit, please. Thank you. This is a prayer that when I was recovering from my leg surgery, I should add surgeries. I had 2 accidents and 2 surgeries, had particular meaning to me. So Kef Kufufim, who lifts up the fallen. So I think we could go through all of these prayers. Hanoten li ayev koach, who gives strength to the weary. Who created me in the image of God, who made me free, who made me an Israelite, who made me a Jew, who adorns or girds Israel with strength, times of weakness, wonderful inspiration otherwise. Otel Yisrael B'Tifarah, who adorns Israel in beauty. All these morning prayers, I think, reflect some of the gems in what I've called the treasure chest of Jewish tradition that have tremendous power, tremendous meaning, tremendous comfort in these difficult times.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing these texts with us and reminding us of their presence, not only in our Siddur, but in our lives, helping to add meaning at a time when everything can kind of feel like we're just kind of drifting along so much out of our control. It's absolutely not the case.
Sure. And obviously, and thank you, we've just scratched the surface, as you well know.
That's right.
And I encourage everyone to dig deeper themselves.
Music has been such a part of your life and your rabbinate. We were grateful to hear you this past Shabbat with a Hine Matov that you wrote. I'm curious what you're listening to right now for comfort and for inspiration.
Well, first of all, I think as I wrote to you when you asked me to do the video of Hine Matov, the truth is that since I retired, I played and sung very little altogether. And over the past year, for a simple reason, after my leg injuries, I couldn't sit and hold the guitar, and I certainly couldn't stand with the guitar around my neck, getting extra weight to my injured leg. And then I had my heart surgery, which had me pretty much bedridden for several weeks. So I haven't done much. And on top of everything, the ventilator went into my throat. I have to add, in anticipation of that surgery, the thing I was most disconcerted about was the thought that I might wake up and be conscious of this ventilator down my throat. Over the years, I'm sure your experiences are similar to mine. I've visited many people in the hospital on the ventilator, and thank God, invariably, it sustained their lives. It saved their lives. I can think of one person who was on and off the ventilator over the course of many weeks. Almost everyone had the same reaction when I asked them afterwards, did you have a sense of being on the ventilator? You know, was it disconcerting to you? And all of them generally said no, except for the one man who was on it for several weeks. Be that as it may, the ventilator definitely still has impacted my vocal cords. So that said. But here's an example of the power of music. When they were soon to remove the ventilator from me, it was obvious to my family that I was waking up. I'm happy to say I have no recollection of this experience altogether, but I was waking up and I started, as Alice described it, I started to flail about. So I was reacting to the ventilator. The team came in, the professionals came in and asked everyone to leave so that they could remove the ventilator. And Alice said, just a minute. And what she did was she started chanting the mantra that the two of us chant together and have chanted together every morning, first thing in the morning when we get up. And we've done it for now years. And she said, it calmed me down right away. So I think this is one dimension of the power of music. I'll tell you the music I'm listening to now is liturgical music. And when I've recently, in fact, picked up the guitar to play and sing, I've gone back to the old repertoire of songs that I would do, for example, at temple. One of the gifts of my, and I always say this with a smile, Rabbi, my exile from Temple Emmanuel, is the opportunity to visit other synagogues. And I've heard wonderful voices, professionals, cantors, obviously, lay choirs, on and on and on, in my travels to other congregations that have become these sacred earworms to me. And here I'm going to harken back to my heart surgery in December. The first 24 hours were pretty rough. I was hurting pretty much with every breath. And one song in particular kept running through my head, if you will, a holy earworm. And it was a Mi Chamocha that I had learned at Road of Shalom. Afterwards, when I thought about it, I realized it was getting me across the sea. And the miracle was to live at a time when my heart would have otherwise failed without that surgery. So I think this is an example of how deeply music can run. I know that you recently had Dan Nichols do a special performance for Temple Emmanuel. I saw his special performance that he did that first Shabbat. I guess it was on the 20th, no, the 21st. Yes, my birthday. From his home. I assume he did the same for Temple Emmanuel. Yes.
Yeah.
What a wonderful talent he is, and how, the music just, it sank into, you could hear and see it's coming from his heart and soul and sinking into our hearts and souls.
It's true.
Music
And if
is
you
so
haven't had a
important.
chance to check out that video, I'd encourage you to scroll down Temple Emmanuel's Facebook feed to see that special concert with Dan Nichols. Brought a good cry to a lot of people, which can be kind of cathartic in this time.
I can imagine. I can imagine. I know the one we watched that morning, there were a couple of times that Dan himself, had a pause. And you could see he was kind of holding back tears. I think you may know that he came as our singer scholar in residence. I'd say it's probably
2007, he thought.
okay. And it was a wonderful experience. So it just shows you how important music is to the heart and soul of the Jewish people. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've gotten to travel to a number of synagogues, and it's really synagogues that have been on my mind lately. This is changing synagogue life, not only in the short term as we're making some rapid decisions to do the best we can, hopefully not setting precedent for future years, but also recognizing in many ways we've opened Pandora's box. I spent the first 10 years of my rabbinate telling people to connect with other human beings. They needed to disconnect from technology. And now I'm saying the only way to connect to your loved ones is through technology. I don't know that we're going to be able to say again, I'm sorry, we can't offer a credible bar and bat mitzvah tutoring experience online, that there's a reason we're not offering classes online, I think the world is changing in a fundamental way for synagogues. I'm curious what you're seeing. I'm curious what you're thinking. Which of these things do you expect to be permanent? What do you expect to return when we can return? Where's your mind at?
Well, I've had my own recent experience, both as a presenter and a passive participant with Zoom experiences. The last 3 classes I taught for Introduction to Judaism were all Zoom. And the last presentation I did for Rodef was a Zoom presentation too. After each session, I go downstairs, my family says to me, "So how did it go?" And my honest response has been, I don't know. If you can't see people's faces, you really don't know how they're reacting. And being at the other end of it too, we are so well trained to divide our attention when we're watching screens. I do know that, it's more than 10 years ago. What was the book? It was all about deep reading vis-a-vis, the title of the book is escaping me, vis-a-vis the kind of reading people do online. There's a tremendous difference about how we absorb something tactile in our hands, as opposed to not doing a very great job of absorbing what we're watching on a screen. Someone who will remain nameless is participating in a master's online course now, and the person told me to sit through a 4-hour lecture online and sustain your attention is impossible. It's hard enough when it's in person. So all this comes to a simple yet very profound point. What is the name given to a synagogue in Jewish tradition? a Beit Knesset, a house for gathering. And I am certain that when that Shabbat comes, Bimhera b'yameinu, may it come speedily in our day, that people know that they can safely go back to the synagogue. It will be like the high holidays for that service. So I think each has its place. I think what we're going to see ultimately is some kind of equilibrium between virtual and real. How well I remember, I think it was my very last high holiday sermon when I spoke about how I've always felt God's presence most palpably and powerfully in other people. And I think the virtual experience can't convey that nearly as powerfully, nearly as intimately, nearly as sacredly as punim to punim, face to face. I think that's when hearts and souls really touch. So again, I understand your concern. I think in the long run, people will find, again, an equilibrium between the two. The synagogue is not about to disappear whatsoever. And I think people will appreciate the synagogue when this is all said and done more than ever.
I hope you are right. Rabbi Mark Mahler, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you for yours, Rabbi. I appreciate it. My best to everyone who may be listening to. For a Zisen Pesach, a sweet, happy, and healthy Pesach, and everyone stay safe. And as the Seder teaches, there's no safer place than home.